Every leader has bad days. Most pretend they don't. This is the show where leaders stop pretending and start learning. Welcome to the Bad Days Leadership Podcast, where leaders pull back the curtain on decisions they cringe about, rooms they misread, and the failures that shaped everything after. Real leaders, real mistakes, real lessons. Because you can't become a great leader without a few bad days. Welcome to the Bad Days Leadership Podcast. I'm Dr. Matt Paden, your host. This is the show where we take everyone's worst days, those moments in leadership that made us cringe, those days that we would like to forget, and learn lessons from those. Today's our guest is Dr. John Delony, two-time national best-selling author, mental health expert, the host of the John Delony Show, and also my friend. And so I am just eager to be with you all today and have John here today to talk to us about those lessons learned from those days that don't go into our social media feed, those days that we regret, those days we lay in bed and we think, why did I do that today? And just the lessons that we learn from those. So we're excited you're here, and we're excited John's here with us. John, welcome to the Bad Days Leadership Podcast.
Dude, congratulations on this. This is awesome.
Thanks, man. It's fun. It is.
We've been friends for like what? I was trying to count, 25 years?
Yeah, we've been friends for
30 years, a long time.
It's been too long. Let's not count too much, but
That's
it's
true.
been a long time. We go way back, and it is just so good to have you here. You're doing all the good things. I should have said also stand-up comedian.
Yeah, no, just clown.
Dr. John Delony. But yeah, man, we're here. We're gonna have a good time. We're gonna have a good conversation here. It's
awesome.
talking about the bad days.
I've never had one of those.
Yeah,
I've been
I know.
universally perfect in my leadership over the years.
Yeah, well, that's good. You can talk to us about that as well.
Yeah, that's right.
That's good. So before we jump in, this is how this is going to work. We're not here to shame, the past versions of ourselves. You do this every day in your work. We do this in our work at Great Days Leadership, where we try to learn. Leaders are lifelong learners. And so what can we learn from? That's what we're focused on today. But it's also fun sometimes to look back and reminisce, oh man, that guy or me, or man, I can't believe I said that, do that. And so we're going to jump in. We're going to be honest. We're going to have a good conversation about those moments that kind of make us cringe, make us think, oh my gosh, where was I back then? But anyway, you ready to jump in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Let 'em rip.
Let's jump in. And you're a great storyteller. You and I love good stories. I know a lot of your stories, but I don't know near as many as I think I do because we have been friends a long time. But when you think about the leaders in your life and or yourself as a leader, what are some of those moments that you're like, I can't believe that just happened, or I can't believe I did that, or what's a story about that still makes you cringe as you think back to?
I've got so many.
Yeah, let's
Oh,
jump in.
I'll start with this is fun. And by the way, I don't know these questions. That's a great question. The one that just popped into my mind is one of the earliest ones. I was put into a leadership position 10 years before I should have been there.
Yeah.
Right. And I was put in that position by a mutual mentor of ours, Ken Jones, Dr. Jones. And we were talking about building a new facility. And I was in charge of dreaming about this thing and figuring it all out. And under the table, I was texting a friend who was a banker because I didn't understand the words, Dr. Jones. I didn't know what amortization meant. I didn't know what debt rescheduling. I didn't know any of those words. And so I was trying to sound tough. And during this back and forth, I was trying to pressure the president of this organization into borrowing, I think at the time was $20 million, which would be equivalent now of making a $50 million borrow, right?
Sure.
And I remember him standing up, and he was no longer talking like ethereally. He was right at me saying, what is the actual debt service payment on this per month, John? Like, and where are we get? And I realized like, oh, I was talking big. I was so far over my skis, and I just felt little and small, like what a dummy, like trying to hang, you know what I mean? Instead of being a young, humble leader saying, I don't understand this,
Sure,
which would have garnered way more respect from him than had I been trying to match him with stuff I didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah, that's a great story. It's a great example. Why do you think in your work, you work with leaders all the time who are dealing with challenges, crisis, anxiety, lots of stuff, right? So why do you think leaders have a hard time being vulnerable? That's what you just described. You didn't maybe use that word, but the idea that, hey, I don't really understand this. I'm going to learn this. but I don't know where you're at right now, or I don't know what you're saying right now, but you're texting on the table versus just coming out and saying, hey.
I think most leaders, especially either younger leaders or like senior leaders, I think there is this lie that we tell ourselves, and that is the only value we have here is the final answer. And that's not what leadership is. And in fact, if you're a leader that thinks you always have the right final answer, you're going to crash your organization. It is, the buck has to stop with you, especially if you're a senior leader. But your goal is to say, I brought you because of your expertise, and I need your wisdom on this, and I need her wisdom on this. Like, I need a community of experts around me on these different things, because no human can possibly know all this stuff. And really, as a leader, my job is to make sure everybody's heard and make sure we are managing the culture here, not having all the right. But I've always felt this pressure. Like, I have to know every study. I have to know every dollar amount. I have to know everything. And I ended up getting focused on the wrong stuff. And then it just becomes I wish I had a better way. It just becomes a pissing contest between who thinks they're smarter and who thinks they're more right, instead of who's bringing people together.
Yeah. So you and I both have spent a lot of time with young people, both in higher education, but also young professionals.
Yeah.
And I think back, and you and I both, we've talked about this before. We had opportunities early on to lead before, just like you said, probably a decade before we should have been.
Yeah.
In roles where we had responsibilities, and so we learned by fire. A lot of people learn as they get some of that that opportunity to kind of grow and learn and watch, but not everybody.
Yeah.
And so we do a lot of work with young professionals, and you think back to those early days and some of those mistakes, some of those moments where you're in the room, you're sitting at the table where you are the youngest person in the room.
Yeah.
When you think about those days and people who are in those days now, what are some things that, man, you thought that was leadership then, but now you look back and you go, man, I was off. That was a mistake. That was wrong. That was, you used to think it was the way it should be.
I think I thought for the first 10 or 15 years of leadership, being as non-vulnerable as possible, is being impenetrable, was the sign of a good leader. And that's just categorically backwards.
Yeah.
It's the leader that says, this is heavy. I don't know. What do we think?
Yeah.
What's the next right move? And I'll own it, whatever it is. When we walk out of here, I'll own it, because that's my job. But I thought leadership was never saying, I don't know. I thought leadership was never saying, hey, can you teach me more about this? And man, I was just wrong. And it's exhausting to live that way.
Yeah, for
You know what I mean? It's so tiring to live that way.
So let me ask you this. You're a mental health expert. So obviously I won't say who this is or anything, but I know of an executive level leader who has to be characterized by that person's team and some of the work we've done with them. They have this kind of innate desire to be the smartest person in the room and be seen that way.
Yeah.
So much so that when others say, hey, did you read that book? Or did you see that article? Or did you hear that podcast? That person always says, yes, I've already read that. Oh, I read that. Something came out this morning. Oh, I read that. Oh, I heard that. Almost to the point where her team, this person's team, started making up books. Oh, did you read the Bad Days Leadership book?
Yeah.
Oh, I read that. They started making that up, things up, and that person would still do that because they refuse to be out of the loop. I mean, what is that? As a mental health expert, why do leaders find themselves not just refusing to be vulnerable, but kind of taking on this facade that they think they can, I don't know, fool people with?
Yeah. I mean, the word that gets thrown around so much that me and my mental health colleagues just roll our eyes is the word narcissist, because everyone, if you just disagree with somebody these days, they call you, oh, that guy's a narcissist. No, he's just dumb, or he's mean, or he's a jerk. But narcissism is rewarded in the workplace up to a point until you crash and burn your whole organization. Right. But you can navigate if you're willing to chew people up, if you're willing to step on people when they're down, if you're willing to be dishonest, you can maneuver your way up through an organization for a season, and then it eventually falls in on you. But it gets rewarded that way. And I hear a lot from young leaders, especially, how am I supposed to manage that? Here's my rule of thumb for young leaders. If you have a boss who's ego's out of control, as Dr. Jones would say. And they're honest, they tell you the truth, then there's ways to navigate that life, right? Like if it's going to make my job, if I'm going to be able to do my job because I ask you a question like, hey, will you teach me about this? And then I already kind of know, but it's going to make you feel good. Great. If you have a boss that lies to you, I'm looking for the first train out, because I can't work for somebody that I don't trust.
Yeah.
That's willing to lie to my face.
Yeah.
About little stuff, about big stuff.
Right.
I just won't work with people. This long in my career, I won't work with people organizationally that are going to lie to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. I appreciate what you just said there, but one of the things I know that happens a lot in leadership, not just for young professionals, but as you continue to move up the ladder in an organization, you're both receiving feedback and providing feedback in healthy organizations, right? And sometimes there's a I don't know, there's a spectrum there on how you might describe that, but think about in your own experience, maybe a moment where you received feedback that you didn't like, or a moment where you had to give feedback and you held back. And maybe you didn't share the truth. Yeah. You talked about the truth earlier. Feedback is one of those spaces where I think leaders struggle with the truth. Yeah. And we talk about it in the book, the idea of embracing truth. Yes. We think it's a core principle. As a leader, you have to embrace truth. You have to look for it. You have to find it. There's level 1, which is facts, figures, data, and then level 2 truth, which is truth about me. Yeah. Yeah. And that's harder to deal with. So talk to us a little bit about truth, especially as it relates to maybe some stories, some moments where you received feedback that hurt a little bit. And what'd you do? How'd you respond? Or how would you respond differently now? And then maybe some moments where you had to share it and share feedback and it didn't go maybe as you thought.
I've received, I'll say my dad raised me this way, and I had a really powerful interaction with a young professional, a higher education professional, who seemed to, and this is early on in my career, he seemed to enjoy getting hard feedback. And I asked him about it. Like, how do you absorb this? And he said, anytime I get something's hard is going on in my life, in my marriage, in my whatever, the first place I go is to the mirror and ask, what did I contribute to this? And I thought, man, you figured it out. And so I have been blessed. And there's a common denominator to this. If I look back early on at our mutual friend and mentor, Marilyn Fannin, Ken Jones, Jean-Noel Thompson, some of these men who really, and women who, Darby Dickerson, who spoke into my life, we also had a relationship outside of that office. And I knew going into that conversation, the feedback I'm getting is not at me, it's with me.
It's relational, not transactional.
My current CEO, Dave Ramsey, says all the time, like, business moves at the speed of trust. And so I have to share a meal with you. I have to know about your kids. I've got to know you, and you have to know me, so that when I give you hard feedback, you can hear it. There's been feedback in the past when I know this person giving me feedback doesn't like me, or they want my job or whatever. And it never comes across right. It comes hierarchical and like, I've got more power than you, so here you go. And it feels like a colonoscopy. Nobody likes that, right? And so I think I'm trying to think of some specific feedback. I can tell you one that Jean-Noel gave me early on that was really powerful. He said, the reason you're in these rooms 10 years before you should be is because you'll look at the president of the university and say, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then you'll give a thing that you think. And he said, that's why people like you in here. And the thing that's going to get you walked out of this room and never asked back is because you'll look the president and say, and he said, so you got to learn some wisdom on. And that for me as a young hot-headed guy was really powerful. And that still rattles with me through today, knowing this isn't the right time to say what I'm thinking.
Regulation.
Unregulated. I need to, in my nerd world, self-soothe, I got to take care of me right now. And then if I really feel strongly, you and I will have a meeting offline. And that way I don't embarrass you. I'm not trying to do that, but I also want to be honest, right? And I think leaders and I think spouses, I think we have a responsibility to speak in a language the person we're talking to can hear. And that means being multilingual, even if you're only speaking English. Like, my boss can talk to me in a certain way. that would really not go over well with the guy doing the same job who sits right next to me.
Yeah.
And his job is I'm going to speak in a language that John can hear, which might, for me, is real direct. And also, I need some patting on the back because I'm insecure. And this guy just needs a cold, hard facts. And this person over here needs to go to lunch and have kind of and that can sound dramatic, and we don't have time for that. That's leadership, because leadership's relational.
Yeah. I do you think that's more and more so the case nowadays with not just, I don't want to get into all the generational stuff and all the things people talk about, but I do think there's something about the workforce and the different dynamics in the workplace and life work balance replacing work as identity, as a common denominator. I do wonder if that piece is more critical moving forward. We think about, because we talk about how do we train up the next generation of leaders. And it's not, everybody know, you may say it can't be transactional, but then there's some people say, well, you got to have boundaries. You do have to have boundaries, right. But man, you have to know your people.
That's right. That's it. And when people say we have to have boundaries, it's almost always universally, I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so there's a difference between saying to my leadership team, hey, y'all, I'm going through some stuff. So every Wednesday at 4:00, I'm going to knock off because I'm going to see a counselor with my wife. And I want y'all to know that y'all all have freedom to do that too. That is different than saying, hey man, my wife has been cheating on me. And we're I'm not going to cut myself and bleed all over this table, but I am going to give enough to where y'all know that I'm a human too, and that I care about y'all. And I'm asking you to give me some grace here. That's vulnerability. Right. And so there's a difference between like oversharing and having boundaries that are so high, the wall's so thick that nobody knows who you are. But here's the way I would frame that. And my wife did a great job. So when I moved over to be the dean of students at the law school at Texas Tech, I would come home literally every day. These students don't know how to write an email. They don't know how to do this. They don't know how to do this. And my wife, who was Dr. Delony long before me, and she's way smarter, one night I can confirm that. Yes, you can confirm. You know her. She said this, and it was so great. She goes, hey, I've been thinking about your new job. I have an idea. And I was like, what is it? And she goes, you should quit. And I go, what? And she goes, you should quit because these students are clearly not as smart as you, and they're just not as together as you. And I could tell she was kind of just digging in on me. And she goes, I have another idea. And I go, okay, go. And she said, you could do what they hired you to do, which is to be a teacher. And if they don't have a certain set of skills that you think they're going to need, then come up with creative ways to teach them that. And so we started a human 101, like here's how to communicate. And I have the law students that circle back this many years later, like that was my favorite thing, like, cause I didn't know. And so for leaders, it's easy now to go, when I was growing, doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what does this group of people in front of you that's going to help you further your mission and help your customers down the road, what do they need? And it's your job as the leader to step in there and figure that out.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the things that it's not a core principle in the book, but it is something I believe we put it in the book, but it's this idea that where there's no relationship, there's no grace.
None.
And there's some theological components to that we could get into, but there is no grace where there's no relationship, and leaders need that.
Yes.
When I, as a leader, mess up, if everything I do is transactional, well, my people aren't going to just, oh, we forgive you.
That's
or, you know what I mean? Or like, oh, we're here for you, pat you on the back. No, they're going to turn their back. If everything you do is from a transactional lens, and I've seen this, you've seen this, people, they will not show up if you have not shown up for them.
That's right.
Particularly if you hold a position of leadership, right? Not just, we're all leaders, but position of leadership that you can exert power over people, and you do.
Yeah. And
then to that moment where you need to be real, and you can't help but show you're human, or you mess up, right? Yeah. And people they may not show up because you haven't shown up for them.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. So you, not just in your day-to-day work now with the John Delony show and as a mental health expert, but for years, even going back to your days working with college students, and you and I share this, but you've worked with leaders in crisis. You've worked with leaders who are dealing with anxiety. You've worked with leaders who are in the middle of chaos. Here's a question for you. What's a red flag in leadership, in leaders, that you can spot almost instantly now that used to surprise you, but now you can kind of see it coming in terms of, oh, I see this in this person, that this may be something that they're going to have to deal with down the road. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it's a great question. The two that come directly to mind are the leader who jumps to personal attacks. When we're putting ideas on the table and the leader says, "That's stupid," or "I can't believe you said that." That tells me more about them than what I just put on the table. Right. That's the first one. The second one is the leader who won't defer to the expert in the room. So here's a good example. I was at one university. There was a faculty member driving a group of students to serve at an orphanage, and there was a horrible bus wreck, right? And it was in rural Texas. And so our students ended up at 5 different hospitals. We didn't know who was on the bus, where they were going. Like, it was just the worst nightmare. And you have parents calling saying, "Where's my kid?" And you're like, "I don't know." And in that fog, I'll never forget the chief of police at the university. There was a team of us, probably 8 or 9 people around a conference table. And he got up, and the president was there, the one chancellor, like the heavy hitters were in that room. And he got up, and through his body language, through his posture, through the way he started writing on the big whiteboard in the room, it was very clear, I'm leading this. And here's who's going to do what next. And to watch a president, he was brand new, defer to that expertise, I was like, that's because I know all the heat's coming on this president. And the president was able to say, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy's managing different police departments, emergency responders, all the people. And that was a beautiful thing to say, oh, that's what leadership looks like, right? Or Jean-Noel calling and saying, "I've got 2 big student issues, and I know you're close to this group. What's the right path here? Give me your thoughts on this." And I thought that's good leadership.
Yeah. You know how I know that that's not just a made up answer? I didn't know we were going to talk about this today, but you may not even remember this because you were stuck in the middle of all that. I actually showed up on that campus, and you and I had lunch.
Oh, really?
The Monday after that, or Tuesday after that. And I got to go with you to a student gathering, and I got to see you in action. It's one of the first times I saw you in the middle of handling crisis. But also at that lunch, I remember this. That's why I'm bringing it up.
I don't remember that lunch.
I know you were in a fog.
Yeah.
And the fact that I took you away just to get lunch.
No, I'm glad you did that.
Well, but that you went was you just needed off.
I needed a human interaction.
But what you said at that lunch was, "I've seen how to handle crisis now."
Gotcha.
And I remember that.
Yeah.
Because at that point in my career, I had been around and exposed to versions of crisis, but that was intense. I remember that moment, and you were in the middle of it, and you, from my perspective, jumped in and you ran towards it.
You have to. Yeah. And that's what leaders get paid to do, is you go towards the challenge. But a mutual friend of ours, Dr. Andy Young, the one who trained me on like crisis response, like there's somebody who's passed away in that room, you got to go tell mom, that kind of stuff. The 2 things he always passed along, and this sounds cold and heartless, and it's really powerful, which is, if you're about to, I'll bring it back to a leader. If you're about to let somebody go, if you're about to fire somebody, it's their crisis. And the calmer I can come into that meeting, the less amped I am, the more regulated I am, the more I can give them a moment of grace and peace and an anchoring, because I'm about to, like, we know the data when you get fired. I'm about to destroy their...
About to share truth. Level 2 truth that hurts.
That will hurt them psychologically, emotionally, financially, everything. And so Dr. Young used to always teach us, if possible, when somebody comes in and says, "Hey, we need you over here," if you can, walk. Because if you go sprinting down the halls, you're going to bring your chaos to an already chaotic situation. And what that situation needs is regulated adults, right? And so what do I have to do as a leader to show up and give this hard news, whatever that may be, this hard feedback or whatever? What do I need to do so that I show up regulated, right? And that's a powerful thing. And the second one is, we've talked about this, it's facts for your friends. Like, I'm going to stick to I want to stick to the truth. I want to stick to facts here, and let's go through those things. And that tends to reorient people from big feelings to here's the reality that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, one of the principles in the core that we talk about is the idea that you have to show up with grace.
That's it.
You got to show up,
Yeah.
but with grace. And inside of that principle, we talk about this kind of equation, truth plus grace. And over time, people will hear you. People will see it differently.
Yeah.
It's you share truth.
And let's
do it in a gracious way. And then it may be over time. It may be 6 weeks later, maybe 6 months later, it may be 6 years later. You may never know.
Yeah.
But sometimes if you share the truth and you do it in a gracious way, people are going to receive that in a healthier way.
That's it. And getting underneath grace is like, how do I operationalize that for me? Is a lesson I took from one of my professors. We were doing in grad school, we were doing a case study back and forth, and I finally just snapped. And in one of the people we were talking about in our case study, I just said, why won't that idiot quit drinking? He's destroying his family. And my professor said, don't ever ask that question. And I said, why? And she said, it's not an instructive question. Whatever, like the alcohol for him, for some reason, is solving a problem. Mm-hmm. The more instructive question is, what happened in that guy's life that alcohol is the best way he's figured out how to get through a day? And so as a leader, if I'm showing up and an employee's continually late, instead of coming at them, I'm never late and you are, coming at with something's going on in their life.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's psychological. I don't know if it's chaotic at home. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But for this job, you've got to be on time. That level of compassion and curiosity, those like compassion and curiosity gives me grace, right? But that's about what attitude I'm going to bring into that. If I'm about to crush you, or I'm about to be with you, and being with you might walk you out the door,
right?
But I want you to leave here knowing I was on your side.
Yeah. So one of the, I think you and I have talked about this before, and I suspect you may have already just mentioned one a few minutes ago, but in my mind, there are these kind of real simple principles, these one-liners that kind of just stay up here and roll around. And I try to remind myself of, especially when I catch myself not doing something, right? It's like, be coachable, man. Lead with your ears. All these little lines that I've learned from others and kind of come up with on my own. And some of them are in the book, but a lot of them they just stick with you. What are some one-liners that Dr. John Delony keeps in his mind to remind yourself how to show up, how to be, how to navigate the moment, how to be a husband, how to be a father, how to be a leader in your workplace, in your community? You're influencing millions of people. Let's be real, millions of people. Yeah. So how do you keep yourself in check?
I've got three that loop pretty regularly. Yeah. One is, facts are my friends. And so when I'm at home and I'm like, the world economy is going to implode and this is going to happen, whatever. The fact is, I can only control my household finances. And do I have everything in order here? And that's the problem I need to solve, not all this, right? So facts are your friends. The second one is calm is contagious. If I can just bring myself, like, that will make its way through a chaotic situation. That will make its way through a hard conversation. And the third one is one I learned several years ago from, I like to call him one of my students. He was one of the students that when everybody, all the faculty were like, we should be nice to this guy because we're going to all work for him one day.
Yeah.
But it's Jefferson Fisher, who's, but he has a powerful, powerful line that he gave me that has changed my home, the way I parent my kids, respond to my wife, and to employee situations, which is, let your first word be a breath. And when I'm like, what do I say? Let your first word be a breath. And that has and that saves me all the time. Cause I want to pop off with the first, like, oh yeah. Right. And let your first word be a breath. That works on a comedy stage. When you just want to fire back out, let the thing breathe for a second. Let you breathe for a second. And your next thing you say will be much more appropriate and regulated.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good word. So thinking back, what's something you wish you had known, or maybe if you knew it, you wish you had adopted earlier in your career?
I'll tell you, being around, I was unilaterally obsessed with getting the position.
Yeah.
Like pathologically. And it wasn't until I was around regularly Jean-Noel Thompson and a couple of others that I thought, oh no, they actually know what they're talking about. Like when they make a decision, it's based on knowledge and wisdom and info. And I've seen that in me, but I've seen it escalate culturally. How do I get this next position instead of how do I make myself, I wish I had a less dorky word, but undeniable.
Yeah.
I know this better than anybody in the room, which means I got to put in more work than anybody in the room. Or as my dad used to tell me in Little League, if you can hit, because I always struggled with really hard ground balls. He used to always say, if you can hit, they'll find a place for you. And so, like, if you know what you're talking about and you regularly put yourself in positions to learn wisdom. So when I was a dean of students, I was running with police officers at night, learning how to do death notifications in horrific situations so that I could be better here. I speak on stages for a living. So on weekend nights, I'm doing comedy sets so I can be sharper and better so that when I show up here, right? It's putting in that work when nobody's there.
Yeah.
And after hours that's not in your job description so that I have a depth of skill and wisdom when the lights come on, right? And I think most young leaders trying to aspire to these other positions need to spend more time on getting the information, learning what they're doing, learning their craft, learning how to be excellent in their thing. The market will reward that, right?
Yeah.
And instead of being focused on trying to get this place, because you're going to get that place and it's going to be very short lived because
You're not ready.
You're not, you don't know. And I would go back and tell 26-year-old me, triple down on learning what you're talking about and then learning how to communicate that, not obsessively trying to navigate some system to get some job to make $4,000 more so you can make yourself feel better.
Yeah. The work is real.
It's super real.
You and we've talked about this even recently on a phone call. You and I, as young people, were given stages, platforms, and microphones.
Yes.
You did a lot of different things before you found your way into higher ed and found your way into what you're doing now. But being on stage and having the opportunity is a blessing.
Yes.
But you had to relearn
in a major way because for 15 years having a microphone was about me.
Yeah.
And now I'll give you, like, in just the stand-up comedy world where I like, and it's not a job, it's just something that's a great hobby for me. There are comics who get on that stage and their expectation is, I worked hard on these jokes, y'all owe me laughter.
Wow. Yeah.
And you feel it in the audience. It's like, and then there's those comics that walk out and say, none of y'all have the $30 you spent to be in here. None of y'all had the money for the time, the 2 hours. All of y'all have babysitters and whatever. My job is to give y'all 2 hours away from the chaos and crap that is the world out there. I'm going to be a good steward of y'all. And so learning, like, that responsibility. I'm holding this microphone, not for me. I'm holding this microphone. I'm going to be really good at the craft. I'm going to know my content. I'm going to know the science. I'm going to know how to, like, the humor points so that y'all can walk out of here and have better lives. Yeah. And that stewardship angle shifts everything, I think.
Stewardship, it's knowing your craft, it's putting the work in. Yeah. It's not just getting the job, it's being ready to roll.
Being ready to
One of the programs we run through our company is for people who make the jump from being on the team to leading the team.
Yeah. And those are different jobs.
2 different jobs, completely different jobs. It's like Magic Johnson was a point guard for the Lakers.
Right.
One of the best ever.
He's an owner of the...
But then he became the coach.
That's a different job.
It didn't last a season.
A different job. That's right.
And I think about that all the time.
Michael Jordan never coached.
Absolutely.
Because that's not his thing.
It's 2 different things.
That's right.
And so you have to be prepared. You have to put in the work. You have to be focused. It's not just about getting the job. It's about doing well when you get that promotion, when you get that opportunity to lead, when you get that opportunity to step into something new and different. It's being prepared.
Yeah.
And so that's really good. So just one last question for you, or one more question for you. As we kind of move towards wrapping this up a little bit, what is a mistake that you remember that you have lived through in your own leadership journey that now shapes your what you would call maybe your leadership style?
I am categorically and fundamentally terrible at hiring. I'm bad at it. And this is going to sound cheesy, but it comes from a good place. I pretty much love everybody. Like whatever
Of course,
person, I just like people.
Yeah, I know you do.
And so somebody would come in for a job running budgets. And it's like, hey, we have a $50 million portfolio. And they're like, wow, I hate spreadsheets. But I have a great lunch with them and we have a good team meeting. And I'm already thinking, well, I could actually give the budgets to this person. So I know about myself that I'm not good at hiring. And so I always, at my last university, before I transitioned to this, I wouldn't do hires without a couple of at least 2 or 3 people that I deeply trust with the weight of the organization in that room with me. And usually I like to get people who disagreed with each other.
Sure.
And so if they all said, oh, that's the person, then I would say, okay, I want to have deeper conversations there. But instead of going to war with myself and trying to prove like, I got to fix this, I made peace with, I love being around people and I will try to make something work for somebody, even if I know it's going to cost us down the road. And so having other people support me in making that decision and seeing my blind spots. All right. My friends in the military, nobody would head out on a mission alone. That's insanity. You have people watching, eyes in the sky.
Absolutely.
I need to have that. Why would I not have that in my office space or my job? So when I get a great new idea for my show, we're going to do this. I have 2 people and they're like, terrible idea.
Yeah.
Terrible idea. And that's helpful. I need that because I get real big emotions and real like, all right, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So one of the things I have appreciated about you, I don't know if I ever told you this, but this is true and real for a long time, since early in career, because we tracked together.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot together. One of the things I've appreciated about you is that since the beginning, you've never seen people as being broken. You've seen them for their humanness, their humanity.
Yeah.
For the leaders listening or watching this episode today, some may be carrying shame, guilt from past mistakes, some massive mistakes, some just sit right in front of them, even if they were small, but they were mistakes. What would you want those leaders to hear about what those mistakes can do for them in the future? What they can.
I mean, if you will courageously set it down, think of those mistakes like a cinder block that you're just carrying around with you. You wake up every morning, dropping your backpack. I'm this guy. This has become my identity. I'm the guy who cheated. I'm the guy who moved money to this account. I'm the guy who whatever. If you carry that around as your identity, it's like putting a cinder block in your bag and saying, I'm going to head off on this marathon with you guys. You're saddlebagging yourself, you're saddlebagging your team.
Yeah.
And so having the courage to set that down, meaning that's a thing I did and here's what I'm going to go do next. That to me is the most powerful thing. And for most leaders, for all of humans, every major religious tradition throughout human history has some component of confession in it. Being in a room with somebody and saying, this is what happened and this is how I participated in it. And there's that in and of itself is healing. And that's why AA works. That's why confession works. That's why getting together with a small group of men or women saying, here's what I'm going through and here's what I did is putting that stuff. That's you taking that block and setting it down and saying, I'm not going to carry that anymore. And that's a powerful thing. So finding a couple of people you can trust. Loneliness with leaders to me is the most pervasive cancer these days. And so finding some guys, some men and women that you can sit down and be honest with and put some of that stuff out, it's just freeing. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much. I believe wholeheartedly that you can learn from your worst days.
That's the only way you can.
Exactly. I think there's so many examples and there's so many opportunities. I mean, in my life, in your life, in everybody's lives to take those moments. What can I learn from this? How can I move forward? That's why we do this show.
Yeah.
That's why we take a different approach to this show than just talk about the positive things we get to talk about every day, all day with our clients.
Can I say this?
Yeah, please.
I I've tried to pull this apart in my head, and I get obsessive about an idea and I can't stop. I've tried to pull this apart, and so I may be off here, but I think I'm onto something, and that is this. Our culture has a line, and if you distill the job you have and the title you have and the house you have and the schools your kids go to and all that down the road, we have what I would call a metric-free society. We're all untethered, and nobody knows if I'm winning or not. And so the only two metrics we have left is what's my job title. Yeah. And the other metric we have left is this crazy question that we ask, what are you worth? And we answer that question with a number, which is insane. Right. What are you worth? All of your investments and your home minus your liabilities, like here's a number, and that's what you're worth. And I think that's insane, because you and I have both met with leaders who have won and they got nothing because their kids walk in the door and head straight to their room and get on their iPad and put their headphones on because they want to be around dad or they want to be around mom. And you get to the end. I just had a long conversation yesterday with Olympic gold medalists, and we're talking about like the depression that follows the Olympic gold. You've worked this long for that, and they hand it to you. They go, congratulations. Yeah. And then everybody's on, and you're like, I gave up my teenage years, my 20s, my 30s for that, right? And it's awesome. It's cool. No one can ever take it away. The answer to the question, what are you worth, is always who do you love and who loves you? And if you can build a world of deep, rich relationships, people to call in the middle of the night, people to call on Tuesday, people to call when something went awesome. You and I have a mutual friend, Todd, and I'll never forget calling Todd and saying, hey, I just need to tell one friend my book just went #1. And he was like, all right, yeah. And he was like, dude, I'm proud. He said some stuff he'd never said to me. And then he goes, hey, well, I got you. And he's a bank executive. Yeah, sure. At the time, he said, my bank just sold. And I was like, are you rich? And he's like, nope, wasn't an equity partner. And I go, what does that mean? And he goes, I think I'm out of a job. Oh. And I said, like, you're the most stable human I know. You can't lose your job. But the beauty was, in that phone call, my win didn't take something from him. Right. And his loss didn't take something from me. We were with each other in a really high moment and in a really low moment. And that's what mattered there, right? And I celebrated him when he got his other job. He celebrated me when I was like, I'm going to go write another one and I'm going to go off into the deep end. But do you have people that you can celebrate this stuff with along the way? And then it makes getting those places, I hate to say this, easier. Yeah. And it makes going home at night after you take your suit off and you just look yourself in the mirror, it makes that more palatable because you've got a gang, you got people.
Yeah, so good. We talk about it all the time. It's not, especially for leaders, it's not what you do, it's who you are.
It's who you are.
And
I would add who you're with.
Who you're with, and it's those pieces. And so one of the things that we're excited about is this book that we have coming out here.
So
this it's April 21st. It'll be live.
My favorite thing is I was raised on a lot of this too.
Well, you and I share. That's
so rad, man.
You offered. We had coffee months and months ago and said, how can I help? Can I write the foreword? Before I even had the opportunity to say, will you write the foreword? Yeah. And you did. Tell us just quickly why you jumped in, why you think, not just as a promotional thing for the folks, but why this matters for leaders who are trying to lead from the inside out. All the stuff we just talked about, and especially the fact that my co-author, we share as a mentor.
Well, there's a lot of leadership trash out there. It's just nonsense, right? It was a long blog article. It shouldn't have written it. The reason I got excited about this, what you and Dr. Jones were doing, is my life that I live now is built on that. Yeah. And I didn't read it out of a book first. I experienced it. Right. And I experienced a leader learning these things in real time and learning how to communicate them to us. And so for me, this is wired into my nervous system, these principles. And so it was like, if I can do anything to get those principles into other people's lives, because they've been such a blessing to me and my family and the teams of people I've led and now this crazy world I've got, I'm a product of this. And so and what I love about this is you and I you are like steady, you show up on time. I'm a chaotic mess. But we both ended up in executive positions. We both ended up leaders in similar places. And so I think sometimes leadership books say you have to, it's a cookie cutter. It's a blueprint for do it like this. And this isn't that. This is whoever you happen to be. This is the way to channel that into loving and taking care of your organization and your people well. And so that's why I love it.
Well, it's been an honor to have you be a part of this project with us. It's been great to have you on the show today.
Oh, it's awesome, man. I'm so excited for you, dude.
I remember vividly, you texted me and said, "Hey, y'all come over for dinner tonight." It was in December of 19.
Oh, no.
And you said, "Y'all come over for dinner tonight. We got some news."
Yeah.
And I texted back, "Are you having a baby?"
Yeah.
And I won't say what you said back. But we went and learned, and you told me, and we had dinner, and you said, "Hey, I think I'm gonna go do this." And I remember just laughing because it was hilarious, but it was also like, of course, because you're wired for doing what you're doing. You're wired to do what you do, and you're making a difference. And you're helping a lot of people push through their bad days to see better days.
That's it. Yeah.
And ultimately, what we hope, great days.
That's it.
And so I appreciate you, appreciate your friendship, appreciate you being on the show today. We have enjoyed this time with Dr. John Delony. If you have enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to the Bad Days Leadership Podcast. And we look forward to seeing you next time on Bad Days Leadership.